my resume. And I wanted to, that's the only thing I was going to read from it was the beginning, but I can tell you. I retired 27 years ago in 1997. And my pledge then was to take my life to you people and do what I can to help people do what the mission of D&I is. And that is very important to me. And I will share with you folks. I don't know where you all came from, but I'm a guy who was born in Birmingham, Alabama on 12/9/34. Now, Birmingham, Alabama, as you know, is in the deep South. And the residential areas, the streets were clay, red clay. And believe it or not, in 1934, my parents lived in an area of mixed race in Alabama. So I played in the streets with white kids in Alabama, but couldn't go in their homes, couldn't eat in their homes. No, but we played. We threw the ball around out in the street. That's a fact. And some of you who question that, I have a thing that I share with my friends. It's called the 3 T's. And the 3 T's is truth plus transparency equals trust. So real quick, 34 born, right? 37 left Alabama for a town in in Indiana called Richmond, Indiana. Earlham College was there, Quaker town. The town had also residential integration, but segregated facilities. Classic case, you go over to the drugstore to get a malt. They have beautiful crystal, just like you can imagine in the books. But when you set up to get yours, you got it in paper. Richmond, Indiana. Fast forward. My mom divorced my dad and moved to Richmond, Indiana, as I said, in 37. We were there, and then we moved to Ohio, a town called Glendale, Ohio. Glendale was called, and is still called, the village of Glendale, outside of a city called Cincinnati. And that city, Glendale, was the home of a name that everybody on this screen is familiar with, and is probably more than likely used his product. It was a member of the Proctor family of Procter & Gamble. Now, Glendale was a village where most of the people of color were there to work for the wealthy. This is not an unfortunate circumstance for a Black kid. I had a new bike when I wanted it. I had this and that and the other. We had 3 acres of land on the back side of our 3-story house. We were, my stepdad was the butler for the Brody Lasker family in Cincinnati. And when they decided to come to California, guess what? My family drove south because it was the worst storm, 1949, worst storm that we'd had in America in years. And we drove south as far as we could. And then we took a highway across the United States and didn't get out of snow until we got to a town called Phoenix. But on the way, we had some interesting things happen. My stepdad could pass for white. And we go to get food in places, and he'd go to the front door. If he wasn't in the car, we'd have to go to the back door. So he came out of a restaurant in Mississippi. I remember it just like it was yesterday. And he had this white guy walking with him. They were chatting. Gets to the car, and the guy says, "What are you doing with all these pickaninnies in the car?" Well, guess what? This was 1949. The car was a 1948 Ford station wagon Woody, which now would be called a classic. So we arrive in Santa Monica rapidly, and guess what? The place we landed was 2008 Broadway in an apartment right next to St. Anne's School. And instead of going to John Adams, as fate would have had it, and being black, schools were segregated to an extent. And Garfield was the local school of presence for the elementary kids. And Garfield also gave us the great man of Santa Monica, Dr. Alfred T. Quinn. That's where he started in the unified system as a teacher. But I mentioned that Broadway address because guess what? That put me in the Lincoln Junior High School district rather than the Adams district. And I make that distinction because this is February, it's Black History Month, and it's important. My friends at Lincoln Junior High School were 60% white in 1949. And guess where they lived, those who know this area? They lived in the north side of Santa Monica, where that at that time was the wealth that owned the stores downtown. And we had blacks in our church at Calvary Baptist Church who worked for these folks and knew the wealthy people. My stepdad's keeping of the property, the Brody's property, allowed him to wind up in some of the major magazines on the floral presentations that you would see in these magazines featuring major homes in Beverly Hills and places like that. And as a kid, I was in the home meeting these wealthy people and was treated like a kid, not like a servant's son. And fast forward, one of the greatest days in my life was July 3rd, 1955, at a church in Venice at 7th and Westminster. I married Ida, my wife. She was then Ida Smith, and that was one of the best days of my life. 67 years ago, we're still partners, and she's my boss. Make no joke about that. Now, Ida and she went on to go to school. I went on, and I got sick, and she did. Anyway, we both got advanced education degrees. And then thinking about what I had pledged in 1997, many years later, Ida and I created an organization called the Santa Monica Gems. Some of you may remember it. We said that Black kids in Santa Monica should be honored with awards for their excellence and scholarships, et cetera, et cetera. And for 25 years, we honored that program, and it worked beautifully, and we got Black kids the recognition they needed in this community. Well, in 1958, I had taken an exam at the Santa Monica Police Department where I was an officer. And a little later than 58, because I came on in 58, I made sergeant rapidly. And guess what? We had two blacks, Leroy Witherspoon and Young. And these two blacks never policed white folks. I was the first Black policeman in the city of Santa Monica to write a white person a ticket. These are experiences that you should know. We're talking Black history and D&I. And so by virtue of that, I thought, well, I want to be chief of police of this department. And that was a serious thought, because some of you don't know, my mom told everybody when I was born in 1934, and a few years after that, as soon as I could utter a word, that I was born grown. Now, many of you on the screen may be of some faith, have some faith, religious faith that you belong to. Well, in our situation, we had a church, and every Sunday the pastor would go around to dinner at the various members of the church's homes. And this is in Alabama. I'm saying this to give you a reflection on this is D&I now. I would involve myself where most kids were told to put a zip on it and shut up and listen. And I'd ask the pastors questions. Well, believe me, that set a tone for me. Move forward. my friends of 60% white and of great wealth later paid me back. Fast forward, I ran for office in 1971 for the Santa Monica City Council. And I got a good friend, she could be called Nat, but she ran, and she has a great opportunity in front of her. But I came out with the largest vote in the entire city. Why? Well, I prepare things. I was a student at UCLA grad school in political science, and I asked the professors if they would be interested in trying a little experiment, having a black man run for city council in the city of Santa Monica, and how that might happen. Guess what? They organized, I'm told, the first 100% precinct units in every precinct ever in the city of Santa Monica for me to run. And I topped the ticket in all votes for the positions in 1971. What a launching. Well, I loved it. But I also was a person who didn't tolerate stuff that wasn't right. As I indicated to you on the police department, I was the first police officer, a black police officer, to write a white person a ticket. Well, Santa Monica and I got along very well. I was president of the Santa Monica Police Officers Association when, for 5 years, and at one time, I believe, because Leroy and the other gentleman had retired, I was the only black police officer on the Santa Monica Police Department for that moment in time. Yet I was president of the organization. Well, Santa Monica was a very popular place in law enforcement because they had a lot of connections through the state. So I ended up becoming the head of the state. I was on a national law enforcement outfit. And guess what? There's something called Peace Officer Standards and Training for police officers in California. That means you got to do certain things in order to be a police officer, theoretically. I became the guy named John Vandekamp. I don't know if you guys remember John. John nominated me to be chair of the California Post Commission. So that meant that one day my car broke down on the 405, and we were coming from a meeting with a couple of other people, and so the tow truck came and CHP came, and tow truck could only carry the driver and his wife, and he couldn't carry me. So the CHP officer said, "Sit in my car until I get through, and we'll come over. We'll figure out getting you a cab." So I sat in the car, and how the world works is strange. The conversation led to my being on the Post Commission, and the guy pulls out his post certificate, and my name is on it. And guess who took me right to my house? The CHP officer. I'm giving you these background experiences because it's important in my life at being an octogenarian, seeing things that shouldn't happen and speaking out about it. I went to Santa Monica College, backing up a little bit to 1952. I was elected president of the first class of the campus in 1952 that opened on Pico Boulevard. First class president. Moved on up in that political structure at the college to where I was, the highest rank I got was vice president, but the biggest tribute that I left at the college is this factual 3T people. My elected group put in something called the clock tower on the Santa Monica College campus. Now, some of you may not know that Santa Monica City was a very Republican town. And they wanted to put a statue of Abraham Lincoln on the Santa Monica College campus, on the new campus we'd opened up out on Pico. So my style in all these politics, and I think Judy and Patricia know me, I don't fight, I listen. And so what I suggested to the board, the student board, was education is critical. And an education tower goes on beyond the politics of the community. And if we put a tower up, that just says Santa Monica College is here to educate kids. Those kind of things resonate with me. I left Santa Monica College and went on with other things in my life. I went out to Cal State LA, and folks, guess what? You're listening to the first affirmative action officer in the state of California for Cal State University. I had it at Cal State LA. Now, what I did, I was hard-nosed, and the dean and I were good friends. The dean and I were good friends, and also the president and I were good friends. Jim Rosser was the first Black president at Cal State LA. Well, the deans didn't want to do the affirmative action. I laid down the affirmative action rules and the goals and objectives, all the strategic things we needed to do to make Cal State LA a standout university with respect to D&I, folks. That was back then. And they didn't cooperate with me. So I walked over to the administration building, got on the elevator, went up to the president's office and said, "Sir, Dr. Rosser, you're going to have to find yourself another affirmative action officer because your deans won't cooperate with me in my plans to do the job the state has ordered." So that's one example. And we move on. My wife, we formed another business called TLT and Associates. Those were the initials of the three principals, Terrell, Lindsay, and Travis. I was chair of the criminal justice side. My wife was chair of the education side, and we did consulting contracts. And one of our contracts was with the city of Santa Monica over whether or not the department was moving fast enough to integrate the department. And some of you may remember the Evening Outlook. The Evening Outlook was our daily newspaper. And that newspaper had headlines one day that former mayor finds city of Santa Monica in noncompliance on D&I type hiring. So that happened. All right. I went on to Cal State LA, as I've said earlier. I was their first affirmative action officer. But in criminal justice, I was also highly respected in the field. And like I said, I was a post commissioner and chair. And guess what? The federal courts asked the city of San Francisco to be put under a federal consent decree. That's where the federal court and a lawyer get together, and the lawyer becomes a special master and does that. Well, I'd gone to law school, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a member of the bar. But in my police work and my political world with the police, I met a lot of federal judges. So I got 3 federal judges to sign my application for that job and submit it to the chief judge in the Northern District at San Francisco. Long story short, I probably was the first person in the United States, a non-lawyer, to be special master of a major consent decree in the United States. That lasted almost 20 years. So God's been good, as you can tell, as I recite these things. I'm watching the clock, and I think my time has expired. But I'm not going to let you get me till I say I have a wonderful daughter, professor, linguist, retired from Santa Monica College, and 2 grandsons and other remaining siblings. Thank you very much for listening to me, opening a discussion point. Thank you.